There are very few markets you can see 200 million consumers in one country.
The startups understand what the corporates are looking for, and the corporates also understand what the founders and other players within the innovation ecosystem are also looking for.
The need to bring corporate innovation into the conversations around entrepreneurship in Nigeria and Africa.
How do we build solutions that reach people at that point?
Corporate innovation really should be about corporate and startups trying to work together to innovate around certain opportunities that they see.
The entrepreneurs themselves will innovate the product in the market, and that's how they get our attention.
You have the power to drop something new, ask questions.
I think it's better for organizations to innovate themselves into a winning position so that they don't get innovated out of business.
Businesses are all about value, revenue, commercial value.
So this is the first of the lot to let you know what to expect in this session. So welcome everybody. My name is Odiong, Akpan. I am one of your hosts for today's session, and it is essentially a panel webinar series to talk about corporate innovation. This is the first of the lot. Essentially, we are here to bring awareness to corporate innovation, especially because we recognize that the innovation ecosystem, especially in Nigeria and Africa, is largely being talked about without the help or the support of the corporate organizations. Whereas the corporate organizations have everything from, I'll say, financial capability or might to access to markets, to technology, and so much more. And what we're trying to do here in this series is to socialize with most people or everyone the need to bring corporate innovation into the conversations around innovation and entrepreneurship in Nigeria and Africa. So this is the first of the lot, and I would go through the agenda to let you know what to expect in this afternoon's session. First, we started with the welcome, which is this we're doing right now. And thereafter, there will be an introduction. I'll introduce myself again, especially with as part of Ubulu Africa, the organization which is hosting this with Angela. And then we will do the introduction for the panelists as well. The panelists would introduce themselves and tell you what they do, how they do what they do, and why this is an important conversation which they would like to join and participate in. Thereafter, I'll take about 10 minutes to talk about corporate innovation. We are not actually giving any prescriptive definitions, but that's 10 minutes will be used to set the tone or to contextualize the panel discussion so that we can have a feel of what corporate innovation is, what we think it should be, and what people are saying about corporate innovation, so that whilst when the panel conversation starts, we will contextualize as participants, we understand what is being talked about, and also can contribute efficiently and effectively. The panel discussion will be after that, and the panelists on here would be speaking about their experiences, their thoughts, their aspirations, or even the way they think things should be. It's a very informal conversation. It's not, I think for those that joined early, they must have heard us debating or talking about how this conversation should go. So that panel discussion will be as informal as it could be, so that we can talk about how best we can progress these conversations around corporate innovation. Some 15 minutes will be set out for question and answer session. And this is the point where I would advise the participants to throw in their questions in the question and answer box, which is on the screen here. And we would pick up the questions and answer them, either generally or to specific people. If you have anyone who wants to answer the question, we will send that question to the person, and thereafter we would close. So that's the agenda for today. And I would start the introduction by letting you know about the organizers of this particular webinar series. I work for Ubulu Africa. Ubulu Africa is a venture studio, and we essentially focus on building and supporting tech startups or small and medium businesses or enterprises. And what we do is everything from corporate innovation, which is one of our biases. We'd like to try and bridge that gap between the corporates and the startup ecosystem to support the startup ecosystem and also support the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. We're doing this to further bring awareness to the corporate innovation angle of things. And it is my intention my hope that after this, more conversations around corporate innovation would come about. I will hand over the microphone to Ifeanyi Akosionu to talk about Angela, and then we'll continue the introduction.
Thanks a lot, Odi. How's my audio? Can you hear me?
Very well, can hear you.
Fantastic. So yes, Angela is a corporate innovation collective. So as the name suggests, is a collective of folks, individuals, professional leaders who are passionate about corporate innovation and are coming at corporate innovation from one angle or the other. So the members of the collective could either be founders, they could be investors, they could also be corporates, they could be venture studios like Ubulu Africa, they could be corporate alliance partners. And I think for me, there are three core reasons. I mean, there could be many, but I think for me, there are three core reasons for the formation of the collective or the coming together of these individuals in the collective. The first one for me is really, over the years, personally, from my personal experience, it has appeared to me that the innovation ecosystem, founders, startups, for one reason or the other, have not really been building the right things, right? And so I think that the odds are really stacked against these founders when they are not really building in such a way that they have scale and acceleration in mind, right? Where did they get the sort of the data stack or the data bank that informs which products they want to take to market, how they take those products to market, right? So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, really, I believe, is the fact that partnerships, somebody once mentioned that whether Nigerians or African corporations, we don't really partner very well, right? So partnerships between, large corporates who present an opportunity for massive scale and acceleration, and the startup ecosystem, the founders, it doesn't go really well. So sometimes it feels almost like as if the two partners are speaking different languages, right? So this is something that we're trying to solve, right? By this collective coming together to make sure that, the language is the same. The startups understand what the corporates are looking for, and the corporates also understand what the founders and other players within the innovation ecosystem are also looking for. The third reason for building these communities, I guess, is just the talent pool, and by this I mean just expanding the pool of professionals, whether they're in full-time employment, who then begin to understand what corporate innovation is about and how they can contribute to it. I've heard, in recent times, people come to me and say that they are looking, they have some ideas based on what they are exposed to, and they would like to be able to be part of taking some of these ideas to market, but they don't know how to go about it. So it's important that, we begin to, as part of like what Odi mentioned, expand these conversations, make sure that we have a wide enough pool of people who are coming at this from different perspectives, to make sure that we increase the chances of success for startups and for founders, and also, of course, for investors. So that's really what Angela is about, is a community or is a collective that is bringing all of these different players together. Back to you, Odi.
All right, thank you very much, Ifeanyi. And we come to the meat of it. So we have a nice collection of experts and professionals who have worked in the corporate space for a while and are very enthusiastic about innovation. And so these are the, I would say, the very best of the lots we could start this webinar series with. And so Ifeanyi, I'll be handing the mic back to you to introduce yourself. And thereafter, Jane and Nkem will introduce themselves, essentially talking about who you are and why this conversation is important to you and what you hope to see or have as part of the conversation.
Yeah, so my name is Ifeanyi Akosionu. I'm an executive at Atlas AI. So that's my full-time job. Atlas AI is an organization that leverages geospatial artificial intelligence to help our customers understand where best to place investments, whether it's infrastructure investments or operational investments, right? Right, so that's where I work. In terms of what this presents for me, like I mentioned earlier on in my introduction overview of Angela, is I'm really hoping that we can start as a community and ecosystem, start to build better things that have increased chances of success, right? And I think that corporate innovation, presents an excellent and a unique opportunity if you understand it very well to be able to leverage the scale opportunities that are possible, right? Typically, you would see startups in their pitch deck put information, sometimes these are bogus figures around their addressable markets, right? But if we bring this type of corporate innovation conversation to the forefront, I think those numbers begin to look a bit more realistic, and the pathways to actually achieving some of those results become more realistic, especially when you're talking to other stakeholders, whether investors and the likes. So that for me really is my key expectation, not just for this particular webinar today, but for the entire series and even beyond the series of these webinars, that we start to develop a culture within corporates of understanding corporate innovation, but even within the innovation ecosystem of understanding what corporate innovation presents as an opportunity and how to leverage on that opportunity.
Thanks, Ifeanyi. Thank you. Hi, Jane. Jane, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here, Odiong. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So, I'll do a quick introduction like Ifeanyi has done. So my name is Jane Egerton-Idehen. I'm an angel investor, so I'm also part of the Angela Syndicate. I've worked in the corporate sector for slightly over 20 years. I've worked for large corporates like Ericsson, Nokia. I worked for Meta. I was, heading sales across Middle East and Africa. So I've really spent quite a couple of years in the corporate space. I'm also an entrepreneur. I've run startups. I've run my own startup for about 4 years. And I think that brings me to the question why, this or what my expectation is. What I realized being in the corporate sector and then being an entrepreneur is that there's a need for both parties to create an enabling environment. If we really want to promote economic activity in the continent, then it's not, I think the best approach, of course we do have the normal ways people scale and grow is to have, funds like VC funds or investors invest. But I believe corporates can also invest in so many ways. Their knowledge, their expertise, their access, the ability to enable an environment for a startup to flourish. So all those things, if brought to the African continent, can actually enable startups on the African continent really, really progress faster than we see. Maybe not in the traditional sense of having investors pull funds, and maybe even lead to acquisitions as well. And I don't think that is foreign. Having worked for multinationals, I've seen how these things have been applied to other continents and how they have leveraged it, but you barely see that on the African continent. And I think that's why today is really important to have these conversations. It's good that this could be some of the things we could ask. These are some of the things we should look out for when we are engaging corporates, in the manner that we look beyond the traditional asks for corporates, but see how they can help enable an environment for startups. Because when we do that, for entrepreneurs, we can then promote a better economy. So my expectation for this session, I don't expect this session to solve all the problems in the world for the ecosystem, but I expect this session to start a conversation. I think that we barely see these conversations. We see a lot about investing in the traditional sense of funds and VCs and angel syndicates, but nobody's having the conversations. How can corporates actually participate, collaborate, invest beyond funds? And especially on the African continent. That's a great reason why we should do this. It starts up that conversation. It gives ideas. People start to see all the possibilities. And maybe, as this conversation goes on, we could start to position Africa as an ecosystem that can use this to enable better economic activity. So that's my expectation for today's session.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Nkem, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Yeah, still afternoon. My name is Nkem Nweke, and I work for the Africa Development Center, which is Microsoft's engineering team in the region. Microsoft basically has what you call global development centers, which sits the engineering business or the engineering team. And Africa is the 7th Global Development Center, and 3 years plus old for us at the ADC. Across our Lagos and our Nairobi office, we have close to 600, engineers, Black young boys and girls who are building, supporting, updating, integrating everything you know about Microsoft today, and some things that I don't even know. And I think that's a testimony to the possibilities of what can be done in Africa. That you have, for example, people sitting around me now, and some on the ground floor, who have built, if you type on your browser, Microsoft Mesh. That's a global solution that was built here in Lagos, Nigeria, by a team across West Africa, but it's basically a global product. And we can do as much as anybody else is doing, from San Francisco to Dublin, to centers in India and the rest. So for me, I basically head the innovation business, or part of the team for the region here. And I'm basically tasked with looking out for unique use cases, if I should use that word, that can hopefully morph into a solution. Because if you take a look at it as well, Africa has, its unique challenges. I would always say that we're still going to be in a 2G, no G environment for the foreseeable future. And no pun intended to my friends in MTN who are 5G, but when I look at their 5G, well, it's not the same 5G in UK or the same 5G in the US, But again, there are people, for example, who, buying data at the end of the month because the previous salary is not on their to-do list. They're not using it for anything, right? You have about 49% of people today who are unbanked, right? So we're saying, infrastructure is a challenge, scale is a challenge, exposure is a challenge. How do we build solutions that reach people at that point of their need, as compared to, yes, we're talking about open AI, yeah, but for who really? Like AI, XYZ, who exactly is going to use it, right? So I believe in that, building solutions, again, importantly for where we are, but also obviously where we're going to. So again, I engage with people across, the public sector, private sector, startup ecosystem to say, hey, can we find that solution or use case, and hopefully bring it to my executive team. And like I said, this 600 plus engineers we have are hopefully waiting for the most difficult problems for you to pounce on. And our story, hopefully in a couple of years or months, is that we're gonna build a solution that was ideated here in Africa, built by Africans, built for Africans, but also built for the global community as well, because Microsoft is a global company. What I want to take away from today, I think like Jane said as well, I think, and I tell my team this, it basically starts with the conversation. Let's, start talking. Let's begin to know ourselves, everybody, the speakers here, the organizers, those who have joined the call obviously joined because innovation or corporate innovation is important to them. So let's begin that discussion, and we would form a team so that we begin to at least show people that we understand, what the right standards of things are. Yeah, if we can do that, that basically works for me. Yeah, thank you very much, and over to you, Odiong.
Right, thank you very much, Nkem. And I know you've teed up the conversation with the example of corporate innovation in your space within Microsoft. I'm looking forward to how you speak some more about it. My name is Odiong Akpan again. I'm the moderator of this session. In terms of experience, in the past 20 years or thereabouts, I have also been involved in either developing, managing, or deploying or managing information systems in the digital space. I have worked in different industries. I've worked in the telecoms industry. I've worked in the oil and gas industry. I've worked in the financial services industry. So in a nutshell, what I have become is an enthusiast. I'm very passionate about innovation, and that's also why you see me in this conversation, in these conversations and these circles, where the conversation is about innovation and how best to support either the technology startups or the small and medium businesses who would benefit from technology and innovation, and also the corporates who, in many instances, are passionate about innovation or interested in innovation, but don't know how and where to go to get that support. So you would find me in those conversations as often as possible. So that is the end of the introduction, and I'm hoping that as we go along, the participants and the panelists would have fun in expressing themselves. I put up this slide to try and contextualize the conversation, because when you hear corporate innovation, sometimes people don't know what to think of it or how to place it. I would not align fully with one or the other, but I just threw in these kinds of definitions to help with the understanding, especially for the participants who might be hearing of corporate innovation for the first time. So I have two here. One is from Plug and Play, and the other one is from Revelex, who are both organizations that are very passionate about corporate innovation. So the first one from Plug and Play says, corporate innovation can be defined as the process of enterprises implementing new innovation opportunities into existing business models. And I like that definition because if you think about it as a corporate organization, there's always something to battle against. And like in Nigeria, for example, where we are in a tricky place today in terms of purchasing power or who would use what the corporate is putting out to the market. Sometimes the corporates might need to, implement new opportunities or business models, as the case may be. And that leads me to the other definition here, which says by Revelex that is the process and activities to transform ideas and hypotheses into solutions that add value from the employee, customer, business, and societal perspectives. So that's, in a way, it means that apart from it even being for profit, it might also be a corporate innovating for societal benefit. So those are just to help with the conversation. Another thing I put in here was to say that, of course, there are many ways to innovate, or many avenues. A lot of times when people talk about innovation, they're thinking about maybe only just product innovation, especially in the tech ecosystem. But of course, there are ways you can innovate, like business model innovation, where you can think about how Apple starts selling MP3s or music as one song, as opposed to before when we used to buy CDs or complete albums. You can also have innovation in the product or service, where you are bringing in a new product or service that people are consuming differently and enjoying what you are doing. And of course, process innovation for especially businesses that are not exactly B2C, but they are seeing that they could innovate around how they deliver their services. So it could be your typical mama put or restaurant business who would have a crowd and not be able to satisfy their crowd. And then the person now decides to make a new process, innovate around the process, maybe introducing queues or introducing different stops for the different kinds of food. That for me is the easiest example for process innovation. And the other things to think about would be the impacts, types of innovation by impact. And this one just says that you can have innovation impacts, either very disruptive, which is very new technology, and at the same time, the impact to the market is very high. So an example would be things like AI. Everybody speaks of AI today, and AI seems to be very disruptive. And it reads here, technology or business model that disrupts the existing market. We all have heard of AI. Everybody speaks of AI these days. And that's, for me, is the extreme in terms of technology newness and impact on the market. But there are other types of innovation that are not exactly, in quotes, AI. So you can have the one that is sustaining, which is not necessarily new technology, it's existing technology, but it's having an impact on the market. I'm not sure which technology to put in that bucket because there are so many examples to use. There's also the radical ones, which would be new technology, again, just like AI, but this is AI of maybe a few years ago, whereby it was new technology, it was making waves, but it was not exactly impacting the market. So it was radical in a sense, but not necessarily high impact on the market. And then innovation can also be incremental, where you are not looking for all those bells and whistles. You're essentially just incrementally or gradually and continuously making improvements to how you do your business. So this is essentially talking about how most of the corporates today carry out innovation, or that's how the impact of the innovation presents itself. I'm sharing all of this again, like I said, to help contextualize the conversations. And this is a slide that I'll be actually landing on to open up the panel conversation. And this is mostly from Forbes. Forbes had done a good job at, stating a few emerging models for corporate innovation. This means that corporate innovation is not just one thing. So you can find corporate innovation being carried out in different manners, in different patterns. The panelists, as they were introducing themselves, made reference to a few of these. So, for example, open innovation, where you are involving the external ecosystem. Like in our own case, we talked about the tech ecosystem, involving the ecosystem in the innovation process of that organization or that corporate. There is the one that says here, internal corporate venturing, where the corporate set up internal venture units to invest in startups and external innovation. So what that means is that they set aside some money to start investing. And I think Jane had mentioned that investments should go beyond money. In this case, money might be the focus, but sometimes you invest time, you invest in sharing knowledge and access to data as well. There's the partnerships and collaborations, where they are partnering with organizations to co-create and co-innovate. So I think that is mostly in the tech world as well, where you work together to build out solutions. Nkem had mentioned something like that as well in Microsoft. So I don't think I should read all through, but of course there's entrepreneurship, where you have a lot of employees who, even though they're in the corporate space, are very, very entrepreneurial, and they carry out their entrepreneurial activities within the corporate organization. That is a form of corporate innovation. You have the corporate accelerators and incubators that's becoming more popular, where you have things like the ARM labs today and a few of them sponsoring accelerator and incubator programs to build startup, I would say technology startup competency and skill, and also being able to shop out there for technology or solutions to their problems. You have innovation labs similar to the incubator and accelerator programs. You have crowdsourcing, which is soliciting ideas and solutions from a large group of external stakeholders. We have the customer-driven innovation, which is similar, where organizations go out to get customer feedback and they incorporate that customer feedback into their new products and services. And then the final one, which is related to, I think Angela is like that as well, venture capital as a service, where you have, you partner with external venture capital firm to drive startup investments in areas of strategic interest to the organization or the corporation. So these are very many, I'm speaking to the panelists, these are very many options or opportunities for corporate corporate innovation and venture building. And I would like to use this to open up the conversations. And I'll start with Ifeanyi. My question would be, from your experience, what would you say is the most common, or what appeals to you, or is the most common you've seen, and what are the opportunities that we can look forward to in this Nigerian and perhaps in the African continent?
It's good that you're asking me this question, Odi, because I was actually going to ask you the same question. I was going to ask the panelists this question. The thing with models like this is that they tend to want to box you inside a specific approach and model, right? And to be honest, what I'm saying is that the stage of evolution where not just Nigeria, but Africa is at the moment, or even in other emerging markets, is that it's going to be a cocktail of different aspects of all of this. But if I were to place, my bets on where we are at the moment, and also to maybe suggest what I think we should be doing more of, I would say that even from the days of a CC Hub. CC Hub, actually, if you look at CC Hub from the name, is actually a co-creation hub. I don't know that they are still sticking to that particular theme, but ideally, that should suggest that it's co-creation between corporates and the startup ecosystem. And when you are reading out some of the definitions, right, I'm actually not leaning to any of those definitions. For me, it's a very simplified version to say that corporate innovation really should be about corporates and startups trying to work together to innovate around certain opportunities that they see. Because when you define it like that, then it brings context to something that is really fundamental to corporate innovation, and that's really about partnership, right? So the partnership between the corporates, the startups could be startups who are individual startups, or they could actually be startups that are getting formed out of research and academia, right? The organization that I work for, Atlas AI, is actually, one such scenario where it was based out of research, out of Stanford University, right? So I would say that open innovation for me is probably where we are at the moment, but I'm hoping that we gradually start to get to the middle box, which is corporate accelerators and incubators. The likes of, plug and play, Techstars, that's actually where they, I guess, cut their teeth. And I think they mostly still do the same today. Plug and play, Mass Challenge, for instance, still do a lot of being corporate accelerators and incubators. And I would say that this is where I would want us to be at, just given our stage of evolution. When you talk to a lot of the corporates, looking at internal corporate venturing or even internal corporate innovation is still not something that is very popular for obvious reasons, right? They haven't really fully set up teams and functions with the right levels of authority and authorization to run some of these initiatives as they should be run. So I would say that corporate accelerators present the best platform, some kind of a middle ground, a middle playground for corporates, for the startups, for the academia to converge around certain things that are very contextual and very practical for the markets that those solutions or those opportunities are relevant to. So that would be my take, corporate accelerators and incubators. Very curious to hear what my co-panelists think.
Yeah, thanks, Ifeanyi. I was going to say that at this point, I just want to remind the participants that if you do have a question, you can throw it in the Q&A box. It's on I think on the top of the screen. Just click on it and throw in your question, and we'll be reading them out and answering the questions. Yeah, so Jane and Nkem, maybe Jane first. Do you agree? What are your thoughts about things like this, like these categorizations? And then, let's hear.
I get where Ifeanyi is coming from, because sometimes when you put things in a box, we start to, we are trying to fit it, and if it doesn't fit, then we feel like, okay, there's no place for this.
I just want to say that I was also giving feedback some time ago that some people are very confused, or rather don't know how to contextualize corporate innovation.
Yeah, so no, it's good what you've done. It's always good to start with a framework, but we should be open enough and flexible enough to adapt and be fluid. It's always good. It helps the whole brainstorming and thinking, to have a frame. But the important thing is that don't tie yourself entirely and say this is the only way. So that's what Ifeanyi, I believe, was trying to say. I want to even ride on some of the things you said earlier, because I thought it was good to start with that. I personally believe that there's some forms of innovation that corporates are good at. And there's, from my, spending all this 2 decades plus in corporate, and there's some forms they're probably more challenged at. So we know that when it comes to process innovation, sometimes I feel corporates are very good at that. They're very, because of in their bid to scale and remain structured, they really focus. Think about the company I worked for, Ericsson, on process. And this is some knowledge they can lean into and pass on to startups that need it, because most times a startup struggle with that. Product innovation, is the because I see that as most times the entrepreneurs themselves will innovate the product in the market, and that's how they get our attention. Business model innovation, interesting, but I think if you think about what happened with Netflix and Facebook, those models most times will come from the market, from the entrepreneurs, and get their attention. But it's also good to note that, like you mentioned, once it's sustainable, incremental, corporates are good at it, it's less risky. In radical and destructive, they struggle. And that's why they need the startups. That's why we need these entrepreneurs. We struggle to make radical changes. It takes too long, it's too slow. We struggle to be disruptive. A good one is the AI you were talking about. And that's why I liked that I'm, hailing my ex-employer. But that's what I like with what Meta did last week, looking for startups on the African system and the African market that can also come and sit at the table with this AI discussion, because we know that with a technology like AI, just building language models is so expensive. It's almost $100,000 to buy the GPUs and all that. So there are very few startups in Africa or innovation centers that can afford it for the African market. So when we have big players like that, get us involved earlier on, then there's no story about Africa cannot be that innovative, because sometimes we're not even involved in the earlier parts. We're not enabled in that way. So it brings me back to the discussion of what we're talking about in terms of corporate innovation. What do I see? I think there's some quick wins, especially multinationals can consider for the African continent. There's some I think is too far a bet, thinking about having internal VCs. We see, because even when I was in Meta, most of these internal VCs are based in the US and Europe. Corporates will set up these CVCs in those locations, and most times they are servicing that market. That's where they are looking for the startups or the entrepreneurs. They don't look this way. And I think that discussion might take a bit to come down to our continent. But setting up innovation labs could be an easy win we can start now. I know Google has done something in Kenya, but maybe this is the ask that policymakers should be making when we're having large corporations come to the market. We shouldn't only be interested in how are they licensed and how much they're paying for license. One of the requests could be you have an innovation lab here, because that's how we evolve and develop the ecosystem to do more. Because in a capital market, the market would respond. Once you have that, a whole ecosystem would develop around it. Things like intrapreneurship is something corporates can encourage. Even beyond that, I think something we could add, I know you didn't add it there, would be corporate angel VCs. Why don't you give employees incentive to be part of an angel VC? Corporates could support them in that journey. Because in that way, those, especially the entrepreneurs in your company, which is people that work for corporates but are entrepreneurial in nature, might be interested in actually investing in startups. So think about if a multinational had a syndicate like that, or is partnering with a syndicate to help employees that want to invest into startup, invest. That is the model we could throw in there. That is also possible. Open innovation is another one I would take as a quick win we can also take to the table, because if I look at my time in Ericsson, one of the greatest things I think our market did for Ericsson was to develop one of their key products, which we call the iron. Because in different markets, that product was developed as a standard. And when we came to Africa, we struggled. Our market was not responding. Our market was a market where, because of the large amount of low bottom of the pyramid consumers, people want recharge cards less than $1. They haven't seen that. They're used to markets where it's mostly postpaid, like Europe and US, and prepaid. People are buying like $10 or $5 recharge card. People don't buy $1 and $1 less. So the entire tech was built for those kind of large indexing for databases, not for when you're going to load 70 million worth of vouchers less than $1. The kind of transaction hits those servers and they clogged. But because one of our biggest clients was insisting, we took a local team that understood the challenge and sent them to the mothership in the headquarters to help the research lab innovate that product. Of course, it took, this is like over a whole year of struggle, because it was difficult to convince them maybe that innovation could come from this part of the market. They rather wanted the market to adapt to the product they had. So in that instance, I became empowered because I knew that we could represent our market and push innovation from our market. Because once the company was able to adapt that product, adapt it for the African market, then they could take it to markets like India and Pakistan that had similar product, similar challenges with managing large bottom of the pyramid consumers. So I'm just saying things like open innovation is a quick win, because a lot of corporates talk about it, but do we really do it? We rather want to force the market to adapt to the way their products have been created. Everybody's sending information to the African market to adapt. No, this is how we do it. This is how this product is. This is how it should be. So open innovation is a quick one, I think, if corporates would allow, is another way we can help actually improve the products in the market to service the markets which they are meant to service. So just to put it out there, I feel some of these models can work, but just like Ifeanyi has said, we could also think beyond this framework. Like I said, why don't you support angel syndicates in corporates? That's a good way for corporates to help push and create participation in the ecosystem, supporting even their employees in the organization. I'll pause for now and hand over to the next speaker.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. Thank you. Before we go to Nkem, sometimes the conversation usually is around numbers. Like they say corporate innovation is thriving in, say, for example, the US, because there's a large number of corporates with the wealth of experience and deep pockets. And then when you want to speak about corporate innovation in Nigeria, the question then is how many of them are here to foster that corporate innovation culture. But without stealing Nkem's thunder,
let me just mention
go ahead.
before I lose that. The reality is that we also have to sell ourselves. Yes, they have a large ecosystem that supports startups, and most of the startups are there. But we do have what most of these people don't have, the market. There are very few markets. You can see 200 million consumers in one country. Very few markets. The addressable market will be large for a lot of things. So one of the requirements, if you do love this market and you think this market does have tangible, you have tangible interest in this market, then you should consider that this market is worth investing in. It's not all about because the startups are there, but if the startups are not there, it's catch-22, the market is here. So if you invest in the market, the startups will create themselves.
Good point. Thank you. Thanks for that. All right, Nkem, do you want to add your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I like the, I think your fourth slide, which was defining corporate innovation, and the one on the right, I think by plug and play. I found that very interesting. In my head, the words that came out to me was, new, and the words that came out to me again was around business model. Because from my perspective, when I think about corporate innovation, I think about it again like a system where that brings out outputs again from new products, new services, and even new business models. Even though this says existing business models, but it can also push out new business models. Because again, I look at it like building a startup within an organization, and sometimes as well, it could be that the customer needs evolve faster than can be produced, or on the other end of it, you also see scenarios where organizations are also trying out products that are faster than the products than what the customer needs. So again, for us, within Microsoft and in the engineering team, what we've basically done is from these what you're sharing, we've done lots of entrepreneurship, we've done lots of customer-driven innovation, we've done lots of innovation labs as well, and I know Jane talked to it. So we have what you call the garage, which is the garage is a garage. But the whole idea or the whole concept is, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, when they began in the garage, and our CEO Satya Nadella, when he came in years ago, he brought in that concept of innovation that he wants resources from within the organization to begin to innovate. If, for example, you find a problem with the processes you have within the organization and it's not laid out, you have the power, if I should use that word, to draw up something new, right? One of the lingos that we have within Microsoft is nobody gives you anything, you take it. So if you want it so bad, go build it and show it to us, right? And the garage was now developed to say this is an area where engineers and now where people from the ecosystem come in to basically try and build out stuff. Excel, as today, was developed from the garage. The Microsoft Adaptive Controller, if there's any Xbox fan in the house, when you either as a character you're fighting or you're running off a patch, a plane that is passed or so, you basically feel your gamepad vibrate, right? It basically it's one of the technologies that came again from the garage, which means that we're always building and shipping out things. But we, meaning the engineers themselves, who do some odd job but have this funny or interesting idea, and we encourage that. And I know that Google has Area 120. Amazon has something like that as well. So these are ways whereby people within the enterprise are basically encouraged to see how they can innovate, and they're supported with some kind of framework or process so that anybody who comes tomorrow follows that, and you're basically not lost. And because we're also very customer-centric organization. We also have, engineers or people who go out, to the customers and sit down with them and find out, how is this product working for you, or what are the challenges that you're facing, or what do you see, in the next 5 or 10 years would be your problem or is your outlook, and let's, study and understand it. And, since you're a large organization, we basically go and hopefully take the inputs that we get from you and see if we can throw it into an existing, or a future product. And I think that, the other areas you've mentioned around, open innovation or, partnerships and collaboration and the rest are also good ways to explore. But I would say that organizations obviously are different, and if you know what direction you're leading to as an organization, then you can pick one or two, for example, within this box and say, I'm going to hunker down on this, and I'm going to see how I would, work with my team, or how I will build, importantly as well, a culture within my team to say, this is who we are, this is what we want to solve for, and this is what we want to be known. It's also possible that, as we go on this journey of innovation or corporate innovation, you begin to see, more boxes fill this space, because people have probably identified something new within their market. And I think Africa is very ripe for disruption in new models of innovation, because like Jane said, it's not every day you see a 200 million market, right? But we also need to do the work. There are quite a number of examples, like I mentioned, from Microsoft to Google to Apple, who have these different innovation teams or labs or models. It would be nice to find out how corporates within Africa, for example, approach innovation, or what their success story has been, or what framework they have used has been, so that when we're having sessions like this, we're able to spotlight what maybe an ABSA has done, or a First Bank and stuff like that. I don't see a lot of that happening in our environment, and that, again, that's why I think what Angela is doing and what Ubulu Africa is doing, hopefully would drive most of these people to come and sit down and talk to you guys who are experts, to say, again, hoping everybody comes up and says, oh, they can do innovation, but they need to sit down with people like you to say, can you walk us through and partner with us to make sure that in the next 5 years, we're hitting this mark, or we're hitting this goal. And if we have people who are malleable that way, I think we'll begin to scratch the surface at least.
Well, great. Thanks, Nkem. You actually preempted one of my questions, which is, especially you and Jane, you've spoken about corporate innovation, especially in the context of, I'd say, non-Nigerian organizations. Whereas if I was thinking corporate and I walk into the Corporate Affairs Commission in Nigeria, I'm going to see loads and loads of Nigerian companies who may not have the might of Meta and Meta, perhaps Ericsson and Microsoft. So it's becoming clear that corporate innovation is understood in those spaces, in the big organizations, the big tech companies. But how can we drive the message down to the, I won't say Dangote, that's high, but the Nigerian companies who started building here and maybe at different skills. But I would like to hear people talking about corporate innovation in those spaces. So how can we pass on the message? How can we build the culture and perhaps try and simulate what we have in the West, in Nigeria and in Africa, on the continent? So maybe Nkem and then Jane.
So I think we can start by doing, right? There are already frameworks that have been existing for like forever. Don't fix it if it's not broken. You have different professors around the world who have built, innovation frameworks or so. can these companies that are large, as it were, in Nigeria or Africa, can we even start to say, let's follow this model? Or before that, do we even recognize that, innovation is important? Everybody says they want to be innovative, but, when you sit down and ask them, okay, so how are you innovative? What model do you use? What frameworks do you use? They can't tell you. And sometimes what they rest on is, I've raised 200 million, or I've raised this amount of money. And if you check out, in the startup world, it's more about what you've raised, right? But not so much of what you've used it to do. Or my balance sheet at the end of the financial year and what I declare, we're declaring this XY as a financial institution. And I don't know if you've seen their balance sheets, but it's, some ungodly amount of money, very, very juicy. And with that money, why should you really bother? Because it's rolling in. So whatever it is that you're doing seems to be working, and everybody is going home with a great amount of money until, the startup boom happened, and you see the likes of Flutterwave and Paystack and the rest, who are, still, milking or making money from that same market you've been on for like forever. And, you're a very massive bank with branches, everywhere. And, the startup idea has now come, and these guys are also in that same market. And I dare say that, if you look at Nigeria, as it were, again, if we celebrate the likes of the Paystacks and Flutterwaves and not taking away from the hard work that, those young boys and girls have done, their major markets may just be probably, Lagos, Abuja, Enugu, Port Harcourt or so, but who is using them, in the other parts of the country? How much of that 200 million have they really covered? So you can now see that the size of, the market is large as compared to what they are taking, which talks about great opportunity. So to answer your question is first of all, recognize that innovation is important, and, start from somewhere, engage people who are in this field, and, create a culture for it. Culture is very important because, and I was talking to some of my colleagues around this, again, I've been opportune to only work for organizations types, for example, like Microsoft, where you don't necessarily have to, come to work. Nobody's impressed by seeing you in the office. You know what you're supposed to do, and you get to do it. You actually ask your boss questions, and you want to really find out why they are doing well, as compared to some traditional companies. You just go and do what they say. You can't even, challenge them. You can't even challenge their thinking. So that culture needs to be put in there to say, hey guys, feel free, to get in and share me with this idea. In fact, you get more incentive, and we have a model in-house where part of your, KPIs every 3 months is, what are the innovative ideas you have brought? You don't have to be somebody like me as an innovation manager to bring up. Everybody is supposed to be innovating. And that basically changes, the lifestyle, the thinking, and the culture of people, because they now know that it is tied to their success. So not only did you do the job you were sent to do, but what did you see within your environment? Or what problems have you had, for example, that you've brought in to say, with the model and frameworks that we have in Microsoft for innovation, I've brought in this new insight or this new scenario, and we're using it to change the way we work. We're using it to probably affect or impact people outside the organization. I think those three are just simple, non-technical, non-professor-like steps. Hopefully, our local companies here, can employ. And you begin to see changes. For example, you mentioned ARM Labs and what they're doing. We need more of, listen. We have a financial industry that has 49% or more people unbanked. Why don't you have a bank today who is saying we're building this lab because we want to include those people into the bracket of people who can bank with us, which at the end of the day is going to increase what their market share is. But like I said, what I basically see is they're basically comfortable where they are, making a large amount of money at the end of the financial year, So why bother? But for us to change or turn that dial, we need people who have this innovative, driven approach or thinking in what they do within their organizations.
Great, thank you very much. Culture was reverberating in most of the things you were saying, so thank you. And over to you, Jane. Do you want to contribute to that as well? How can we? I'll just repeat the question. Because we're talking mostly of the big tech, but whereas Nigeria has, let's say, the Dangotes, to the local banks, to the FMCGs, who would benefit from corporate innovation, but might not know where to start or how to follow through.
So I do agree that, charity begins at home. Why? It's not only just to get the multinational, because, tech has been doing this for a while. They've used that to evolve. We also have other sectors or industries. I think one way, because if you want to change habits for me, or if you want to create new habits, you have to use a reward system. And is what considering for policymakers, is there a way we can reward this in our markets? When we reward like a Dangote, when we reward like some of the local banks when they do this, and we reward in different ways. It could be tax break, it could be whatever kind of reward we think is applicable. We can actually encourage them to do this. We're talking about urbanization, creating a whole shift. Maybe if we do this, that whole migration to the urban area doesn't need to exist. We have entrepreneurs and startups everywhere. So think about almost 70 or 60% of the VC funds that come into Africa are all going to fintech. So fintech is a very growing sector, and almost half of that money comes to Nigeria. This is positioning us to have innovation hubs or fintech innovation hubs actually in Nigeria. So that's where the banking sector could lean in. There are top 3 big sectors in Nigeria, like telco, banks, and also oil and gas, and we have local indigenous companies in those sectors that are big enough that can lean in to do some of these things. With a little bit of incentive from policymakers, maybe it will help them. I'm just saying that because also they're used to doing CSR type activities, which, we want to build a hospital, we want to build a dialysis center. I'm not saying those things are not good, but this is more empowering. This is actually enabling the ecosystem to promote economic activity. This is teaching people to fish and not giving them fish. And if there's a struggle, organizations like Ubulu or Angela, that's where you come in to help these corporates create that structure that is suitable for the market. They can do that even in conjunction with the local state governments, because those local state governments, we've got a startup bill, but I kind of sense some of them are even struggling how to interpret it. We don't have that interpreted yet for the states. But these are ways we can actually promote that startup ecosystem. If we foster partnerships and collaborations, telling that manufacturing company, if you can find a way to collaborate with the local ecosystem, this is one incentive we would give you. Telling that local mining company, if you can create an innovation lab here, that some of your seismic tools or mining tools or data, and whatever it is you're doing, we can create a lab here to equip young people to find a way they can help you improve your hardware, software, whatever it is they're trying to do, and give them an incentive. I'm just trying to put some practical ways of doing this out there. But you have to probably give them an incentive because they found a way that works and they stick to it, which is CSR. But we are saying we don't want to be giving fish. We want to teach people how to fish. We want to create an environment where they can fish for themselves. And I think we're very entrepreneurial. Nigeria is one of the top entrepreneurial countries in Africa. And Africa is very entrepreneurial by nature. So what we are saying, just kickstart that environment, enabling it by you coming in and doing some things that can help the environment. If it's, crowdsourcing, agriculture is a big one. We have large agricultural companies in Nigeria that are local. Is there a way we can enable, even, I'm just going up, because I wrote an article, I think a day ago about the bottom of the pyramid, because sometimes we think that, these people don't have money. They might want to invest. They can actually crowdfund to support ideas or solutions that are being pushed that is good for them. It might be good for that sector. Maybe if it's a farming community or a farming state. So just having a corporate that could come and enable and put some structure to that, and maybe support with a little bit of expertise or funds, that could kick off a whole new idea where we are seeing crowdfunding even within amongst themselves. And we've seen that happen in markets like India, even in Ghana when I used to live there. So I'm just saying it's really possible, but it's good to get the policymakers involved a bit so that we can help incentivize some of these corporates, because we're asking them to change behavior in the way they've seen our market, in the way they've seen our continent. Don't just give us fish. We actually want to learn to fish. So we are saying just support us in that progression.
Odi, just wanted to add something to what James said. There's this possible nexus between the industry, enterprise, and education, which hardly exists, in the global south, if I should use that word, Africa or even Nigeria. And I know we've mentioned Dangote like 2 or 3 times, and it just something popped to me while Jane was talking about it. Seeing how much has been pumped into getting the refinery ready, which I don't know if it's going to be ready this year or next year. So imagine
2025.
Yeah, 2025. Imagine
now.
Yeah, imagine working with universities, professors, young students to say we're building this massive refinery which is going to help and probably even change our future. Let's begin to study the challenges, or what is going to the challenges this refinery will have even within our environment, right? Or as a refinery, I expend XYZ number of carbon, whatever it is, or so. Sit with your team in the university. I'll sponsor you, provide everything you need, feeding, transport, courses, whatever it is, and let's get a solution to it. And if they are able to do that over time, you can see that investment will even come back to the organization, saving you money. But on the flip side, they've supported, professors who may have probably even written papers. They probably they have a pipeline of young university graduates, maybe the best of them within the team who did the research, who now probably even come to work for this organization also. So you just basically begin to see that tripartite union between these organizations, and things begin to flow. That's another way a corporate can look at innovation, supporting the ecosystem. And I hope it's something they take important. For example, I know Shell has back then used to have some kind of training school also, because they wanted the best who come out of the petroleum engineering department from universities to first of all go to this training school, and the best will get in. The spill-offs from there probably went to the ADAX and the smaller companies, but you basically see that it was a plus for them in the long term or in the long run. And I think it's an easy way for companies to take some of their funds at the end of the year and want to invest into things that would help them hopefully in the future.
Right. Thank you very much, Nkem. I do well to bring this kind of hot cakes to the session, and you guys are really giving us great nuggets of wisdom. Ifeanyi, I know you've been waiting to add your own voice, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack. Just listening to Nkem and Jane, just go through the points on culture and tax incentives. But I also want to land on the incentives, and just looking at the Q&A as well. There's a question there from Share, and a lot of things that Nkem was speaking to, right? I don't know that we have all of these things incorporated already in the startup bill. But I think these are things that are driven from some kind of a policy framework and a policy support, right? There's a reason why in the other developed markets, you have a lot of funds from different sources, developmental funds, philanthropy organization, doling out funds for research, that research may be from academia, or they may actually be industry-based research. I believe it's because there's some kind of tax incentive that goes to funding some of these type of initiatives. So that's definitely something that we can explore. And I believe there's a policy dialogue upcoming in a few days. That's something definitely to bring up in those types of discussions, right? But let me take it slightly back to some of the previous comments made by Nkem, for instance, where he was talking about the comfort level of some of these big organizations as one reason why we haven't really seen corporate innovation, grow or get adopted. And I would agree with that. But I want to also point out the fact that when you look at sectors like, telco or financial services, that comfort is very quickly disappearing, right? The mobile operators, for many years, we are complaining about the OTT players, where they now became like dumb pipes, and the OTT players were now the ones who were actually just gaining all the share of what they should have been gaining, right? I believe the same thing is beginning to happen in the financial services space with the banks, with the likes of the neobanks and digital banks coming in to take quite a sizable amount of market share. The reason I'm laying all of this foundation and background is to say that that comfort, whatever type of the organization or whatever size of organization you are, sooner or later that comfort, will be taken away from you. So I think it's better for organizations to get into this, innovate themselves into a winning position so that they don't get innovated out of business, right? And having said that, I think that culture, right? One other thing that I was thinking about is, given that we have strong regulations in some of these industries, another thing that could actually foster innovation, I know it's starting to happen with some of these drive around local content. You see organizations like NCDMB, even CBN at some point in time is also driving for local content. I think if we have those type of foundational pillars in place that encourages and incentivizes large corporations, especially in regulated markets, to collaborate with the startup and innovation ecosystem. I mean, it may be early days, but if we give it some time and see some of those collaborations start to happen at scale, over the next 3 to 5 years, I think we are going to see actual unicorns come out of those type of frameworks and collaborations. And everyone follows the money, whether it's investors or whether it's startups or whether it's young graduates or young founders. Everybody follows the money, right? So the sooner we start to record some of these successes, I think will be the sooner we start to see corporate innovation become more widespread and widely adopted, right? And what I'm saying is actually nothing new. I know there are alliances, even from bodies like GSMA, who are actually supporting for mobile operators to come in under one umbrella, open up their APIs that then encourages people to build around certain need areas, and with the opportunity or with the promise of opening up very large markets across the world to some of these new initiatives and innovations. So I think it's early days yet, but I think the progress is there, right? The last thing that I want to say is that if you look on the supply side, right, in terms of the innovation, we haven't done badly in terms of the ecosystem. The ecosystem has grown, and that's probably one of the reasons why we are now beginning to have this conversation, because we have realized that this is one aspect of that ecosystem growth that hasn't grown, reasonably well compared to other parts of the startup ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem. So on the supply side, we do have a lot of talent. We can do better, but we do have the talent. On the, I don't know if I should also call it a supply side again, but if you look at on the problem framing side, which is the corporates, right? The corporates ideally should be the ones coming up with the challenges that the startup ecosystem needs to innovate around. We have enough problems when you look at all the different sectors. So I think what is missing is really what kind of bridge or what shape and form should that bridge that links both sides take? Should it be something that is almost semi-forceful, from a regulatory point of view, where regulators are pushing for, maybe sandbox environment or open AI or legislating around local content? Or should it be something that is incentivized in some way, again, by governments? Or should it be something that is mostly private sector driven, in which case the industry needs to get in front of this and begin to take charge and actually encourage that kind of collaboration? Either way, it's going to happen sooner or later. I don't know which of these three options is the best, but I think it's almost a natural course of events that this will happen sooner or later, given the kind of conversations we're already starting to have. These conversations, by the way, are happening at different levels, not just at this private gathering. It's happening at different levels, but I don't think we are coordinating enough. The government and the policymakers are doing their thing. Developmental institutions are doing their thing. Academia is doing its thing. I mean, if you talk to a lot of vice chancellors, they also are looking at ways to have more engagement with industry. But we need this rallying point where everybody is bringing all of these different aspects to the table. I think it's only then that we will see real progress.
All right. Thank you very much. We are going to be ramping down now. I've actually been enjoying myself. I wasn't even keeping track of time. We've been having very juicy conversations, and now we have about what's now? About 13 minutes to go. I'll go through we have two questions. Were you able to answer Cheye's question? Was it a question or a comment?
It's a question, but I addressed it from
okay.
a comment.
All right, so I have another one here from Ifeanyi, and I'll read it out and perhaps one of you can pick it up. It says, the Nigerian corporate space doesn't seem to have that mentality of proffering support to innovators, startups, etc. What can be done to first of all encourage or reinvent the culture of corporate support from the big corporations in Nigeria? Before then, looking at how these innovations will support growth, because there is a lot of short-sighted questions arising around what's in it for them. I know you have touched on this, each of you has touched on this in a way, but I think the participants here just says there seems to be some short-sightedness in corporates, and how can you revert the culture? We have touched on it in a way, so I would say we should use this last round. Maybe you can touch on it again if you want to, but to say, first of all, thank you, but let's use this last round to say what you would like to hear some more, because for me personally, I've had fun listening to you. I want to hear how I want to hear what's next you want to hear talked about. So let's say in our second webinar, what would be necessary to talk about so that we can double down on these conversations. I'll start with Jane, and then we'll go around the room before we close. Thank you.
I think we've talked a lot about so many things, but maybe some of the things we could talk about, maybe practical steps we could help local enterprises or corporates actually do this. It might be good to have, because sometimes you're telling people about the problem and you're not telling them about the solution doesn't help them. Of course, talking about it creates awareness, which is what we've done, but also really engaging them to tell them what is in it for them, because I kind of feel businesses are all about value, revenue, commercial value. If there's a way you can use their language to show the value in it for them, how they can solve innovative problems in a cheaper way by doing this, or they're creating more brand awareness for themselves in the market they exist. So if there's a way we can articulate that, but then really have a conversation on how they can get help to do it, because they probably might need help. Sometimes the corporate services, the divisions of some of these companies are structured for an entirely different agenda. This is something probably new for them. And once it's new and they don't know how to grapple it, they might not even be interested to. So maybe baby steps of what they could do, just like we have acceleration program for startups to help them. Maybe we need to do something for actual corporates to help them start getting into this.
Thank you very much. Ifeanyi, you want to go? Okay.
I'd say that, innovation by its nature is also very hard. It's not easy. I think I have the hardest job on earth, really. I honestly think I do. Again, once you are talking about building the next best product that will come out of Nigeria or Africa for Microsoft, that's huge, right? But it's also very interesting. And, talking to the question at the point that Ify OJ asked, I think it's just for us to start. For me, what I'd like to see more of us talk about really is that nexus between the industry, enterprise, and people in academia. I think it's very important. You go to, Startup South event, you go to Lagos Startup Week, you don't see anybody from the university community. They probably will be even out of place, in there as well. But in, the Western countries, you see that, Toyota has a lab inside of MIT. They're thinking about the next futuristic design. They're thinking about aerodynamics and stuff like that. And Silicon Valley was basically started, from a government point of view, right? So those people basically need to sit down and meet to say, we need to be together, because that's the only way for us to, improve or go forward. If not, we're always going to be, giving something. Some stuff is always going to we're just waiting for somebody to hand us down, giveaways, as it were, as compared to us, looking into our local environment to say, how can we, based on where we are today, design X, design Y, design Z, for us to move forward. If you look at the South African business environment as compared to Nigeria, you see that they are so far ahead from us. If you look at, what the South African stock exchange, what their value is as compared to ours, it is like light years ahead. But these guys are doing like next level stuff, right? And you can't do more than what you know, right? So I have one of the financial service industry, one of the banks, and I think in all my corporate life, he's probably one of the most innovative CEOs I've ever met. Not just from how he talks, not just from how he engages, but the things that he does. If he's not invested in more than 30 startups today as as an organization or as his own, I think he's even a fund himself, right? And he's just finding a way to encourage these guys every now and then. I was speaking to him the other day, and I was like, imagine if half of the banks in the country are doing what you're doing. Then you're stretching innovation and you're supporting people to do the next thing. At the end of the day, he's doing.
You're allowed to mention the names so that we can even big ups as well.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure how he's going to feel about it also.
Yeah, but that's very good resume, by the way.
Oh yeah, very good resume. And the thing is, while you may clap for him for doing what he's doing, at the end of the day, he's going to be the first person who will reap all the benefits of this stuff, right? So at the end of the day, it's no harm. It's something you need to explore. But again, on one hand is exposure. If you're not exposed, if you don't see it that way, then probably you don't want to do it. And to Ifeanyi's point as well, I think we need to come to the point where, government has to put in some policies and regulation to be able to, make innovation, first and frontal in all that we do. There is no other way, as a nation or as a people, that we're going to scale if we don't put innovation ahead. And let's not probably call it innovation so it doesn't sound too scientific, but that's what we really need to do. So I'd like to hear more discussions on this platform like this, and I hope we can scale around it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, you've been left with a few minutes. So if I can do yours in 2 minutes, we can wrap up.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, my closing statement will be twofold, right? So what I want to see and what I want to hear more of as well. So let me take the first one. Is what I want to see is actual, rounds and circles and engagements as a team, as a community, having a session with Nkem at Microsoft Office, and having these conversations, and even maybe the bank CEO that he mentioned, starting to engage and have these conversations, I think is very needful right now. What I want to see more of is that I would like to see more of these corporates. Let's see if we can bring some of these corporates, whether they are chief digital officers, chief marketing officers, chief information officers, CEOs, come here and talk to us about, we may be seeing all of these things, all of these opportunities, but because they are sucked into their day-to-day routines, they are not able to prioritize this. So can we have those conversations, and how can we help them start to prioritize what we're talking about? And I really want to end with talking about Ifeanyi's question, because I think it's a very, very important question that she asked. The truth is that, as I mentioned initially, that I don't believe that our corporates partner well. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, where we have a power distance issue in Nigeria and across Africa. The corporates, by the nature of their size, just feel like they are doing the startups a favor. Most times, they actually need to see the startup as collaborators, not necessarily that this is one small company that are trying to help. So I think that's something that I've also personally seen, right? So I think it's a really important statement to put out there. How do we begin to, is it a mindset shift? Is it a culture shift? Where we start to have these, collaborations and engagements and conversations to that level, where corporates and the players within this corporate environment start to see startups as collaborators and not some person that they're giving some handout or the other.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ifeanyi. Thank you, Nkem.
I want to mention, sorry, we're out of time. To Ifeanyi's point, I think it's important that even corporates, you can invite a, CIO or CTO, but does he really know what he's talking about? Some may not. While he was talking, I was like, why don't you have, an Ubulu Africa, who takes them, like Jane mentioned as well, through a corporate innovation accelerator? Or why not you hire somebody whose job is to be the head of innovation, for this manufacturing company or bank or whatever it is? His job is just to drive, what the next best strategy or framework is, obviously working with the CIO, CTO, CHRO, and even the MD. That would be great, because I'm sure if you call them to come and talk, I'm sure they'll come and talk, but you're probably the board thinking that he doesn't know what he's saying. So they should also be open, to bringing people from outside to shepherd or handhold them to what their next level is going to be.
I agree.
Thanks for that, Nkem, and thanks for recommending work for me. So I'll start shipping my my CV or my business proposal. But yes, thank you very much. I want to address the attendees. I know this particular one, this is our first of the series. We were not able to give as much opportunity for interaction, but we will probably send you something for feedback so that we may introduce you into the conversation. But thanks for taking our time to attend. We had a lot of people on the call. and we are very happy to have you engage and listen. We hope you got value, and thanks to the very experienced panelists. I want to see you again on this series, or one of the panel discussions on this series. So I'll be calling you back in a few months or weeks. So thank you, Jane. Thank you, Nkem. Thank you, Ifeanyi. We have come to the 90 minutes mark. I'll say have fun with your corporate innovation journeys, and I guess we'll talk some more. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and thanks to participants.
Thanks, everyone. Really, really nice chatting with everyone. Thanks, Odiong. You're fine. Thanks.
All right, then.
Bye.
Yeah.
Nkem,
Thanks. So.
yeah.
Bye, Jane. Bye.
Bye, guys.